Hello, and welcome back to the Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money easier. As always, this is your host, Lauren. And I'm joined today by Dale Wills, an experienced real estate developer who has been involved in the industry for more than 25 years. He's the owner and founder of Centric Companies, and since 2011, he's overseen the development of more than 1,500 homes. He recently established Centric Capital Partners, a real estate syndication company, partnering with accredited investors to build wealth through the ground up single family home developments in the Midwest. Thanks for joining me, Dale.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
Absolutely. So today we're going to make adulting easier for listeners by discussing a personal finance topic since managing money is a big part of adulting. So today, Dale, we're actually going to talk about buying your first home. And let's just kick off with who should buy a home? Should everybody buy a home?
That's a good question. A lot of people ask is, should I buy a home or not? And I think there's more to it than just a simple question. When you look at the economics of buying your first home, one of the important things is how long are you going to be there? Because there's expenses. And if you're only going to be there 2 years, generally speaking, you're better off renting because you're going to be 6 to 8% when you sell. So if I have $100,000 house, just to break even, I need to have built up $6,000 to $8,000 worth of equity. And that takes time. We're at a 5.2 inflation rate right now for the last 3 years, but that's not always true. And you don't want to buy your house based on what you think might happen in the economy. I don't think there's a straightforward answer to that. What is your lifestyle? How stable are you? However, I think buying a house is an amazing investment. That's where a lot of people's wealth is built in buying a house.
Uh-oh, your primary residence is an investment? Say it isn't so. That's actually controversial, Dale.
Yes, it is. I go against most, financial advisors would tell you this is really bad advice, but I'm a big believer in getting out of debt as fast as you can. Now, that's really bad advice when a lot of us are sitting on mortgage, rates that are 2.5% and 3%. I mean, that's free money. I can go and put my money in a savings account, get 4 or 5%, and my mortgage is getting 3%. And so I've got a positive cash flow. But for me and my lifestyle, I love owning a house that is paid for because there's a lot of burden that we carry and stress that we carry when we have debt that we have to cover every single month. And so from a strictly financial advice, that's really bad counsel to give. From an emotional standpoint, for me, I like being debt free. I like knowing I don't have to worry about it. I make better decisions. I'm a happier husband, a happier father. I'm a better employer when I'm debt free. And so for me, it's an investment. It's an investment of owning a house and not having that worry and that stress. And that's a personal preference because if you put it on paper, it's a really foolish decision.
Absolutely. And it depends on the interest rate. I'm glad you mentioned that. Like you said, that finance on a spreadsheet basis, if you can make more than what your interest rate is, you should probably be investing it instead of paying your home off purely from a spreadsheet perspective. Nowadays, if your mortgage is, 6.5%, 7% range, that is a little bit even trickier of a question. In my opinion, it might make more sense to pay off your primary residence in that instance. What if there's people out there, they have their primary residence, they've got a decent mortgage rate on it, 3% range, and they have some cash and maybe they have some equity and they want to buy an investment property. What do you think then?
I think it really is a personal decision. It really is a personal decision. You can grow a lot of wealth and do really well by taking that extra cash and going and buying an investment property. Investment interest rates are higher. So you're going to pay a
Yeah.
half, 1% more for your investment property. Another strategy for a lot of people is buy your first home, save up some cash, turn that into a rental, and then go buy your second home.
Yep.
And then you're getting
Well
the
done.
lower interest rates. And so it can be a really smart strategy. When I say pay off your personal residence, that's a personal preference. That is not a wealth building strategy at all. If you want to build wealth, you have that cash, start building a portfolio of rental properties slowly. You get a house here, you get a house there, You're allowing people to start paying down your own mortgage. If you're paying that down each month, I mean, if you buy one every year for 10 years and 40 years, you have 10 houses that are paid for free and clear. That's a pretty good nest egg all of a sudden for a retirement. And so it's a great strategy for wealth building.
I call that primary hacking. I don't know if there's a actual word for it, but where you buy a residence, you can put as low as 5% down. If you're going to move in, the interest rate, like you said, is a whole percentage point, 100 basis points lower at least than what an investment property is. And then after a year or so, you move into a different one, you do the same thing. And that's a way, and you don't have to change. I tell people this, and I think people know, but they never really think about it. You don't then have to refinance your house into an investor loan. You keep that mortgage. All you have to do is actually intend to move in, technically, but move in, let's just say you have to actually just move into that and then you can move into another one. So I call that primary hacking. And this is a key point that, and you mentioned this, but I just want to like double click on it, if you will. And I had a friend that did this. He's like, Lauren, he was like Dave Ramsey guy. He's like, I'm gonna have my house paid off in 11 months, and then I'm gonna buy an investment property. And I'm thinking, with what money are you gonna buy an investment property with, right? So he paid off his house, and then like it was about a year later, he's like, Lauren, I just bought 2 condos as investments. I'm like, but how? He's like, well, I refinanced my house. And I took that because it's not, that is the cheapest money that you can get. And it's
No
the most
question.
leverage that you can have. And so a lot of people, you just need to understand that now you are then sort of putting your home as collateral on your investment properties in that world. If something happens and you cannot pay for your investment properties and you used a loan from your primary residence to pay for those, it can get you in a little bit of trouble. But I think as soon as people start realizing, okay, my interest rate on my house can be 3, 4, 5%, that's how it was, right? Or this new one can be 7. It doesn't take very long until people are using their primary residence equity to invest, anyways.
And it's important to recognize it's very difficult to build wealth without taking risk.
Oh, yeah.
There's risk involved in building wealth. What you're sacrificing something. And many cases, this strategy you're talking about, we're sacrificing that peace of mind of having our house paid for. But I've done very well. I've been very fortunate. Our family has been very blessed. And my wife is not a risk taker, so I don't tell her about anything I do. That's an agreement we have. I don't tell her about business things because she's not a risk taker, and I am a huge risk taker. And I've risked everything many times in my life, and I've lost everything once in my life. And so you can't build wealth if you're not willing to take some risks. And your strategy here is that take a little bit of risk on your house and build some wealth, building up a portfolio of rentals, which is a really great strategy. And a lot of people have done very well doing it.
My attitude about risk, I know a lot of people in my life that will not risk $1,000 or $2,000, for example, and they will then not make $100,000 or grow their net worth by $100,000. And I understand that on a single decision, but if you adopt a mentality of some risk, you take a step away from risk aversion enough times, you're going to have enough of those. Yeah, I lost $1,000 or $2,000, but the next time I used the same thinking. I made a similar decision. I made $100,000. And if you do that enough, like just to me, the benefits have outweighed the costs. I will say I am 35. I turned 19 the week Lehman crashed. So then basically from then on, it's been like bull economy, basically. Like we've had some ups and downs and stuff. So, I haven't had the opportunity to get totally wiped out like a lot of people did in the great financial crisis. So, come back to me in 10 or 15 years and I'll tell you if I change my opinion on all that.
Though there is a mindset. T. Boone Pickens, a billionaire, and he wrote a book, The Second Billion's Easier.
Yeah, of
You know,
course.
he had billions, lost it all, and then made billions again. And so part of it is it's really is a mindset. Wealth building is a mindset, and you've got to learn it. And so you're 35, Lauren. Yeah, we might have some pain in the economy and you might lose some things, but you have a mindset, a growth mindset. And that's what the important thing is. I did live through 2008 and we made a huge amount of money as a result of that. And that was mindset. We
Yeah.
found what we were looking for. And in every economy, there are opportunities. There's people out right now that I'm not going to buy a rental. I'm going to wait for interest rates to go down. Well, you look at historicals. In the 60s, interest rates were really low. And a lot of people said, well, I'm going to wait to buy a house. I'm going to wait to get an investment until the interest rates come back down. Well, guess what? They waited until 1993. They waited over 2 decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how much wealth was built in the 1970s and 80s by people where other people were waiting for the right conditions? And I see that today. People are saying, I'm going to wait till they go down. Well, 8 months ago, interest rates were significantly higher than they are today.
Right.
Today, they're significantly higher than they were 3 years ago. And so, if you made the decision to buy an investment property 8 months ago, what does that mean for you today? If that thing was profitable 8 months ago and you could refinance today at 1% cheaper, now it's really profitable. And if rates go down another 1% in the next 8 months, now you have an investment that's enormously profitable. So if it was profitable at 7%, how profitable is it going to be at 5? But if you sat and waited, who's to say that when they were at 7%, they didn't go up to 8? And if it was profitable at 7, then do it.
Well, and I don't like when people say, yeah, when rates go down. I'm like, okay, when rates go down to what? Because they could always like theoretically go down more. I mean, if somebody said a year ago, I'm going to wait till rates are lower, they were the lowest they were, I don't know, a couple months, August, maybe September 2024, since 2022. How many people did the thing? Do you know what I mean? Like they're like, well, I'm gonna wait for it to come down more. And then they never do it at all. I mean, I for sure know people who have been thinking, I bought my second house in 2017 and moved out of my first house and therefore had my first rental in 2017. I knew people that were thinking about buying rentals then that still haven't. And I gotta believe they just never will, because how can you ever get over the fact? I mean, you should get over this fact, but I just don't know, psychologically how you get over, oh, I could have bought this house in 2017 for, I don't know, $200,000. And now it's 550. How do I buy it now? Even though you should, because that's like, I don't know, sunk cost fallacy or some kind of thinking that you're supposed to sweep that under the rug and go with what you have right in front of you. But yeah, I mean, it always seemed easier before now. I feel like it always seems harder now than it was before. But at every time I've made a buying decision, there was uncertainty, there was risk, and it wasn't a sure thing until you look back at it.
Yeah, I think what you say is so important in that how do you act? If I was thinking about it in 2017 and I'm still thinking about it today, one, some people just aren't wired for it.
Right.
They're not wired for that risk, and that's okay. And if you're not wired to build wealth, then it's okay. Don't build wealth. Don't create a stress. However, I think there's a lot of people that they want to build wealth. They're just paralyzed with fear.
Right.
And I think the key there is we've got to surround ourselves with people that are bigger thinkers and positive thinkers. We are
Yes.
all surrounded by the people that'll tell you all the reasons why not to buy a rental property.
And a lot of them have never owned one.
Yeah. That's what we're surrounded by them, and that's all we hear is we hear all the reasons why starting a business is a dumb idea, or why we're going to fail, or why buying a rental is a dumb idea, why interest rates are high, why inflation's going to ruin the investment. And that's all we hear. We go to Thanksgiving and we hear it from our siblings, and we hear it from our parents and our aunts and our uncles, and we go out with our neighbors, and we're bombarded with these negative messages. And so what does that do? That takes the fear we have and it totally paralyzes us with inaction. Because it's like, all we're hearing is these messages of why it's not going to work. And I think what's really important is we've got to surround ourselves with people. This podcast is the perfect example. Listening to these podcasts help us surround ourselves with people that are bigger thinkers. And that's what you've got to do. It's not that we're not going to go to Thanksgiving and hang out with our family, but just don't talk about business. Don't talk about rentals with people that are going to tell you why you can't. Because there's a lot of reasons. The reasons of why you shouldn't do something is unlimited.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so you and I are both sitting in front of bookshelves with I think a lot of books. I actually see Who Not How. That's the one I read last month. So I have that behind me here too. Books can help with that too. A lot of times maybe you can't find those people or you don't have time for networking events. I mean, you should be able to find people online that have this abundance mindset and this big positive thinking. But books are a good way to keep your mindset in order. I mean, I still read a lot of personal finance books. That's my personal finance shelf right there. And I still read them. It's like, am I learning anything? I don't know, but it's sort of just keeping those thoughts flowing and keeping the certain mindset over time. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, I'm a huge reader, 50 to 60 books a year. And
Wow.
I
I'm
love
at 12.
biographies.
I'm at
You're t-
12. I'm at one a
that's
month. And it is
amazing.
not.
I don't know what the statistic is now, but years ago it was the average American after they finished their formal education read one book every 7 years.
Yeah. Well, that's
So Lauren, you are 47 times better than the average American, which is amazing. 12 books a year is fantastic. And biographies are a great way. Reading about people that have succeeded because they have a different mindset. One summer I read the biography of the first Bush, Clinton, second Bush, Obama, and Trump. And somebody's like, okay, that's kind of weird. I say, I didn't care about their politics. I cared about if you become the president of the United States, you have a mindset of growth. That's what I was looking for. I didn't care about their politics, but you don't do something huge and amazing like becoming the president of the United States. I don't care if you're stupid. I don't care what your politics are. You had a growth mindset. And so biographies, I think, are a great way of people that have done something big with their life.
yeah.
I think the finance books, I agree with you. Finance books are great. And that doesn't necessarily change our growth mindset. It gives us strategy, it gives us, how do we do this? How do we execute? How do we succeed? But how do you have books that make you think better? And Who Not How is a great
Right.
example of a book of, how do we all focus on how we're going to get something done versus the who.
Yep. Yep. That was a great book. I read Walter Isaacson's Elon Musk biography recently, and
Mm.
that made me want to get the Steve Jobs one. And so you'll be happy to know my November book is the Steve Jobs biography, and I've started it already, even though we are recording in October. And so this is what I do. This is a little bit of a tangent, but when I get ahead, like a couple weeks ahead, I reward myself with a fiction book. And so I have like my four like goofy fiction books over here that are my next rewards for when I get ahead of my book of the month, if you will.
I think that's an important principle you're teaching right there. Is I'll get caught up in the finance books and read them over and over, and I just get tired of them. I just
Yeah.
get tired of reading, and it's like this is torture. And I think you're teaching a really powerful principle, and that is you've got to have variety. You got to have variety, and throw in a good fiction book here and there, and throw in a good biography, and then throw in a good finance book, and throw in a good business book, and have that variety, so our mind doesn't become numb to it and
Yeah.
start hating it. And
Oh,
I think that's
absolutely.
a super important principle you just taught.
I'm really into like I've been doing books about thinking this year. What did I read? I just got done with The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, which was really interesting.
Oh, I
I
haven't read
read
that one.
I read Flow and I read Thinking Fast and Slow. So I was doing a lot of books about thinking and I was like, all right, biography time, I think.
Yes.
Okay. But anyways, I digress. Okay, so back to buying a home. We're gonna take a little left turn, U-turn, go back to where we were. We've talked about, buying a home, why you should buy a home, that it's an investment. I agree with you on all of those. Don't know that I agree on paying off the home, but again, I'm 35, so maybe
I think
when
paying
I'm
off the home
older.
though, the important is I'm in a very different stage in life.
Well, that I for sure I don't hate the idea of having your house paid off when you're like done working. You can start taking from your retirement accounts, and that's how you're going to be living. And you've got your Social Security, and I think all of that is fine. I don't think I'll have a mortgage at that point. That's not in our plans. But if you're going to be, my husband he owns an engineering firm, and he's just having fun with it, not at a point where he wants to sell the firm yet. And for that reason, he's going to be working for a while. So we might as well be paying on our mortgage and investing and
Yeah.
investing the difference and all those things. But anyways, so how much home should people buy? My dad once told me that he's like, we never bought enough house. They bought a house in the 90s and they got a 15-year mortgage and they could really comfortably even make that payment. And my dad's income, I say my dad because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, his income grew after that quite a bit to the point that that was like, it was comfortable when they bought. It was super comfortable pretty shortly after that. And they paid it off even before the 15 years. But you don't end up with like a ton of equity in your home. They're not, I mean, I guess they could theoretically downsize and use some of that money for retirement, but how do you know how much house to buy? Let me put it that way.
I think if you're using the strategy that you shared, that the hacking strategy, I think what you want to focus on is what is the best rental you can have.
Right.
If I'm going to
Yep.
be moving each year. And so, I love looking at it like a funnel. How many people can afford $1,000 a month? At the top of the funnel, there's a lot of people. Who can
Yeah.
afford 2,000? That funnel gets narrower. Who can
Yeah.
afford 3,000? And so the closer you can get to the funnel, the less your risk is.
Good
And
point.
so if I have a house, which is nearly impossible in any market in the United States right now, that has $1,000 a month payment that I can rent for, plus thousand, there's a lot more people that can rent that than my house that needs 2,000 versus my house that needs four. And
Right.
so if I'm trying to build a rental portfolio, really what you want to look at is what is got the best opportunity to rent. And that is, in a typical market, a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 car garage house is often your easiest rental. Um,
Hmm.
we own apartment complexes. We own a lot of single family rentals. This is a general rule. This is not absolutes. There's always exceptions to it. Most of the people that are renting apartments from us want to own a home. Most of the people renting homes from us do not want to rent a home. And
Yeah.
so if I'm building a portfolio of houses, I want to have a house that's going to appeal to a broader audience. The people that are renting our homes, the more expensive the home, the more they treat it like it's theirs. The cheaper the rent, the more they treat it like they're a renter and not an owner. But in all cases, in the homes, they treat it like it's theirs more than the people in the apartments. And so if I can have
Hmm.
a home that has a broad appeal to renters, live in it, enjoy it myself for a year, and then go buy the next one, I want to make sure my payment's not so high that I can't save up money for my next down payment. And
Hmm.
so, the industry generally will say 25% of your income, is set aside for housing. Now you can get mortgage loans for as much as 40% as your income.
Yeah.
Um, but if I'm at 40%, if I max out, I have no way to start saving to buy my second rental and to buy my third rental. And so I've got to make sure that there's enough wiggle room there that I can start saving money and set it aside every month to go get my second rental. Because if I'm doing 5% down and I'm buying depending on the market, it's going to vary. But if I'm buying a $300,000 house, I've got to be able to save up $20,000. And
Hmm.
so, well, what is it going to take to save that if I'm using 40% of my income for my house? And so that's generally what I look at is what is the market? What are people willing to rent from you? And then how do I make sure I have enough left over that each month I can save a little bit? And you don't want to be so poor that, especially as you have rentals, the furnace breaks down.
Yeah.
You better have some money to fix that furnace.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. Something that I did as I was doing the primary hacking thing, moving from primary to primary, renting the previous primary out was buying small multifamilies, and that helps you cut down on what you're kind of putting out every month and help me save a lot for the next one as well. So if you can just kind of, I think of it as like maybe every 2 years buy a property and then move and do that for 10. So you end up with five, maybe like duplexes or four duplexes and like your quote unquote forever single family home. That's a way to do that too. And let's say you're not even thinking for sure about having a rental property or for sure that you want this primary to be a rental in a year or two. It still gives you a lot of flexibility in case something does happen, in case you maybe get in a relationship with somebody and you want to move into their home, or your job transfers you away, or something else happens, you can still maybe keep that property and rent it out. It kind of gives you the utmost flexibility if you do it that way.
Yes, absolutely. And you said that that's one thing that I caution people too is what you're buying. If you're looking to rent, make sure that if you have an association, they allow it.
Oh, yeah.
That's
No, for
becoming
sure.
more and more common that associations won't allow it. And so you have a strategy of I'm going to rent this out, and then you go to
Yeah.
do it and find out, oh, they don't
Yeah,
allow
some of
rentals in
them,
here.
yeah, some of them it's something simple like you have to live there for 2 years, which the strategy would work for. But some of them it's like you have to live there for 2 years and then only 25% can be rentals and you have to like apply to get, yeah, no, for sure. That's a good point.
Yeah. And there's
HOAs.
some that it's just flat out they don't allow rentals. We get different alerts and I'll see properties that pop up and it's like, oh, I should go look at buying that. And then I usually have to look, okay, look, oh yeah, they don't allow rentals. That's why it's 25% cheaper than anything else on the market.
Something else I wanted to mention about the funnel that you were talking about is most landlords require the tenant or tenants to have an income of 3 times the rent. And so let's use a $2,000 example. That means the tenant's income needs to be $6,000 per month. That's $72,000 per year, if my math is right.
Yep.
The average, I mean, that might be about average for the entire United States, but you've got to ask this question of is that average for this area or not? If the average income in your area is $40,000 and you're trying to rent a $2,000 a month rental, you need somebody to make quite a bit more than the average. And you've got to assume they don't already own a home that they want to rent and maybe they'll just be there for a year. So that's something else that I wanted to mention about why it makes more sense to go with something that appeals to more people.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's absolutely right. 'Cause we do that. We have our requirements to rent an apartment are different than our requirements for the house, but we do have income requirements. And to your point, if the average income is 40, probably don't want to buy a house that requires a $2,000 rental payment. Go
Yeah.
buy a house that's going to be 1,500.
Something that we've heard about recently, I think it had a lot to do with the spike in home values or prices from like 2019, 2020, 2021. But we heard a lot of young people who I think got caught up a little bit in like this like mania of or like FOMO, like I have to buy this now because I'll never be able to afford it again. And we've heard a lot about buyer's remorse. So I think some of what we're talking about here can keep you from having buyer's remorse if you're buying the right asset and it's marketable and you have all this flexibility with it and you didn't buy too much and all of those things. But what are some other ways that people can avoid having buyer's remorse once they buy their first house?
Buyer's remorse is not something I can relate to. I'm a forward thinker. I'm a make a decision and don't stress about it. You've made the decision. There's
Right.
nothing you can change. So how do you make the best of the decisions you've made? Have I made poor decisions? Oh, certainly I've made lots of bad decisions in my life. But once the decision's made, what do I do about it? The buyer's remorse, you need to do your due diligence, find people that if you can find somebody that can be a mentor that's done that, that can give you the pointers of make sure that they allow renters here.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're not going to get into a house that all of a sudden is going to need $20,000 in mechanical and
Right.
plumbing repairs. And so that's find somebody that's got some experience that's willing to mentor you and walk you through it so you can find those blind spots that you might have because if you're new to it you have blind spots.
You're new and it's your house. You're emotional too, which can cloud things.
Yeah, we find on new construction we build new houses as one of our businesses, and new buyers are impatient buyers. So if
Yeah.
they've never owned a home, generally that's not a buyer that'll wait 9 months for their house.
Yeah.
The first time buyers are buying houses that are almost done. And so that's the big thing is you can't allow your emotions. You've got to run the numbers. You've got to say, don't do it based on, we've been at 5.21 inflation. And boy, if that happens for 3 more years, all of a sudden my property is going to have 15% equity. We don't know that. That could happen, or we could have negative. We don't know. And so don't be thinking about where we're going to be 5 years from now. Do it based on where we are today. Get somebody that knows what they're doing to help mentor you, to see the blind spots that you don't see, and put it on paper. And an exercise we do, we buy a lot of real estate. We buy real estate every month. We're buying more real estate all of the time with what we do. And we actually go through an exercise when we're buying real estate, and nobody knows who's going to get called out. But I'll say, all right, you two in the room, I want you to argue why we should buy this asset. And you two, I want you to argue why we shouldn't buy the asset. And then sometimes I'll change it up and make them switch sides. But if you can't tell me what the risks are, then you've got a blind spot. There is a risk to everything. And if you can't see those risks, don't do the deal. When we're doing something that's exciting, we're all really, really good at seeing the upside.
Yeah.
It's the downside that we miss. And so if you do that analysis, say, why should I do this deal? Why shouldn't I do this deal? That feels like so elementary, but it really helps us. And if you don't see the downside, don't do the deal. And then when we're done with that exercise, I say, is the upside worth taking the risk of the downside? Can I live with the downside? And if the answer is no, I can't live with the downside, I don't do the deal.
Right.
And there's a lot of deals that I wished I would have done that we didn't.
Right.
But there's a lot of deals that we didn't do that I'm glad we didn't.
Right. Right. I know all of that definitely happens, but I think it's key that you're talking about getting a mentor, somebody that's done it before. If you like start asking like those family members at Thanksgiving, like we're talking about, it's like, they're going to tell you not to do it, so be careful who you're asking and helping.
They're really good at that. Why you shouldn't do it list.
Oh, so pessimistic. Because they love you, right? Like they don't want you to get like it all comes from a good place, but definitely got to ask the right people. And once you analyze the deal, once you get the input, once your pros heavily outweigh your cons and you've analyzed the risks, then you do need to buy it though. Like once you
then
find
take action.
stuff,
Don't be that friend that you were talking about in 2017, still waiting.
Please don't. I will cry myself to sleep at night if that happens to anybody listening to this. All right. So is there anything you want to add, Dale, before we wrap up?
Just surround yourself with smart people, whether that's podcasts or books or friends, and think bigger. Think bigger. There are so many opportunities out there. When everybody was running scared after 2008, we made more money during that period of time than any singular period of time. Right now, interest rates are high, inflation's high, and we're on a roll again. We're doing really well. You're going to find what you're looking for in life. And if you're looking for opportunities, you're going to find opportunities. If you're looking for problems, you're going to find problems. So surround yourself with people that are looking for opportunities, and they'll flow. They'll come. Just be patient and change that mindset, because we all are really good at the mindset of why things aren't going to work. Just change your mindset. You're going to see opportunities, and you're going to start building wealth. You're going to build a fabulous lifestyle for yourself in all aspects if you look for opportunities.
Can you let people know how to find you online?
LinkedIn's a great place at Dale R. Wills on LinkedIn. We're very active on X. We've got Centric Capital Partners, which is an investment arm where people can build wealth with us. CentricCapitalPartners.com is another great place to look. But I love making connections.
All right, I will put that in the show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, X at Adulting is Easy, Instagram at Adulting is Easy, Real, YouTube at Adulting is Easy. If you like this episode, you'll also like episode 149. Personal finance is personal, and so is investing. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Hopefully, Dale and I have made adulting a little easier for you.